Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, children of all ages, is this thing on? All righty-roo, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, children of all ages. I am the Old Humble Guy. We are here in the Old Humble Distilling Company's, distillery. Yeah, that's it. For a very special late night. Let's see here. Get myself situated here. Very special late night. Night in the life. I guess it's a night in the life of the Old Humble Distilling Company. I got my new lapel mic, but I have it on my hat. We are going to be bottling up right over here. And that there behind me is the machine with which we do bottling. And let's get started with no further ado. I need to move this just ever so slightly. How about that? Does that help? Move it ever so slightly? Yeah. Okay, so I need to stack up. Here's what we're doing. 48 cases of Special Reserve and 48 cases of Double Oak Rye. The task for tonight is simply bottling the whiskey, bottling it, and we're going to go with bottling and labeling. We're going to start with the Special Reserve because I don't want to be here for 96 bottles of bottling and labeling and all the stuff. So that's where we're going to be. 3, 4. And as usual, you get to see the full behind the scenes effect. I'm going to raise the camera just a skosh. Because, you can see my feet, but you don't need to. Yeah, that's better. That's good enough. All right. And as usual, the first bottle goes back into the wash. Especially this one because this is the wrong whiskey. This is my straight whiskey, not Special Reserve. Because I didn't pay close enough attention to what I'm doing. And normally I'm not working this late at the distillery. Usually I am working during the day at the distillery, but we had a very special day today. Today was election day, so I was working the polls today, doing my part to protect democracy. Now, because this is basically the same mash bill, I can actually mix these together as far as flavor wise, but I don't want to. At least not inside the bottle. Okay, so once it starts to run clear, I dump back into, this is mostly Special Reserve at this point, goes back into the vat, and then we get started. I still need to pull out 48 bottles. I have an order of 4 cases of our Special Reserve straight whiskey and Double Oak Rye. So I need to have 4 cases ready by tomorrow afternoon. I already have the straight whiskey just under the camera over there. You can't see it. But there it is. So I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about stuff going on at the distillery. 2, 3. All right. So what the hell is going on at the distillery? Ah, geez. That's a great question. We got so much going on. here at the distillery. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 1, 2. This is the third case that I'm stacking up. Whoops. Stepped on the hose, sprayed water everywhere. Okay, that is the partway through the third case. 4 more bottles to get me through the third case. 3, 4. That is 3 cases. We are working on, well, I've actually got a live planned for Wednesday. Got my live broadcast planned for tomorrow night. I don't know what I wanted to talk about tonight, but I just kind of wanted to chat. I know some of the local William, who we got? William Hall? Looky there. William Hall's in chat. Welcome to the party, Will. 2, 3, 4. Tomorrow night. So I've been trying to retool or reimagine how I do the Old Humble Happy Hour. I want to make it the Old Humble Happy. So it's really 2 shows in one. The Old Humble Happy Hour. It's 2 shows in one. There's the Old Humble Happy Hour, right? Which is the hour. It's the first hour of the show. And then it's kind of the Old Humble After Dark, the Old Humble Overnight portion of the show. And that is case number, so that's 1, 2, 3. That's case number 1, 2, 3, 4. That's case number 4. Okay. So, as some of you may know, we have passed the 2.5 million views mark on the channel, which, quite honestly, is insane to me that we have gone and done that many views on the channel. 2.5 million views. And to be fair, most of the views are from shorts. They're not the long form TV videos. Jason Coates is in the house. What's up, Jason? I haven't seen that name in a while. Welcome back to the party. So the reason I'm working late tonight is because I was doing election work all day long. And tomorrow I have a meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I'm not going to be able to come into the office, the shop here, and bottle up whiskey. And I have an order that needs to be filled tomorrow. And because I'm lazy as fuck, I did not bottle up whiskey over the weekend. I did other things over the weekend. I built a bed for my son. I napped a lot. So this is how we'll talk about the election in a second. But that's what I did over the weekend. I should have come in here to do work, but I didn't. So I didn't think I was going to be getting this order. This is kind of a surprise. I'll admit it's kind of a surprise order. I was expecting a couple of cases of everything. I wasn't expecting 4. So, because I was underestimating what the order is, I ended up with what I got. So, let's talk about what I was doing all day long. So, all day today, I was doing election work. So, the work that I do for I'm an elections clerk for for every chance I get, I'm an elections clerk. And what an election clerk does here in Texas, I don't know if it's the same where you're at, but here in Texas, basically, we validate your ID, validate your identity, make sure you're on the voters' rolls, you are who you say you are, and assist you to vote if you need any help. The way our machines work here in Texas, it's not the old-fashioned punch hole ballots. We are a fairly modern society here in Texas when it comes to election technology. It is a two-part system where you have the voting machine and then the tabulation machine. So what you end up with is you have a set of machines where all the data for the election goes to it. This is probably how it works in most states, because I think this is pretty much the civic standard when it comes to elections in at least in major markets. So the technical part of it is the part that a lot of people don't know how it works. The actual your voting machine isn't supposed to hold any specific data. The voting machine is it receives data from the controllers. The controller machines have all the election data, who's running, what precincts, what ballots, blah, blah, blah. That data gets sent to the voting machines where you actually cast your vote. And those are the ones with the little printers, and they print out the ballot for your particular election. This microphone's a really good microphone. It's up here, and I mean it's like it's right next. It's not crackling. It's not over clocking, redlining, or anything like that. I'm sure there's some background noise, but it's kind of noisy in here when the machine runs. But that's not the microphone's fault. Anyway, it's a way better microphone than the one I had. It's a wireless USB microphone. It plugs into the USB port on my computer. And I got it for a steal. It was literally marked down to like $19.99 or something like that from $40, I think. So I got it like half price. Anyway, it's that YouTube money going to good work. And we are currently about $20 away from our next YouTube payment. And tomorrow I'm going to do some kind of contest to try and get there. If you want to super chat me tonight, I appreciate it. Thank you for helping to support the channel. All the YouTube money goes back into making the YouTube channel better. Anyway, back to the election information. So the data goes from the controller to the voting machine, and then you cast your ballot on the voting machine. It prints out your paper ballot. I have a commercial from Call Your Date. Okay, cool. Come on. Sling that what? Sling that mash. Ha. You cast your ballot on the voting machine, and then it prints out your ballot. It prints out your selections, so you can confirm what you voted for, or in the case of ballot initiatives, against. And then you take that ballot and bring it to the counting machine, the scanning machine, which is the tabulation machine, and that counts all of the information on your ballot, or that counts all of the selections on your ballot, and it compiles the data into the count. And theoretically, the way it's supposed to work is that tabulation machine, the scanner, is going to have all of the data, and that's what they end up counting at the precinct or at the county election office. And then they have all the paper ballots, and conceivably, at least, those paper ballots can be used for audits or full hand recounts. You can just take those paper ballots and count the paper ballots and confirm that the electronic data matches the paper ballot data. That's how it's supposed to work. In practice, they never really confirm by doing full hand recounts of the paper ballots that the paper ballot matches the electronic data. They do audits down ballot to make sure that, in smaller races, that the data is accurate. They're supposed to, every once in a while at least, to make sure that for the big votes, the big elections, all that stuff stays true. Whether they do it or not is unknown, but it should be part of the election tabulation process. I don't think it is. At least we don't have the data that confirms that it is. It's supposed to be, though. So there you go. That's how the process works. And my small part in it is that I sit at that table and I take your ID and I log you in as a voter. And I tell you, here's your ballot, put the paper in the machine, follow the instructions on the screen. Have a nice day, blah, blah, blah. That's my small role in participation in the democratic process. You know what? Here's a good topic we can talk about. Because this actually came up today we have fun. We're sitting there for literally 12 hours. I've been up since 5 in the morning. I'm sorry. I've been up since 4 in the morning. My alarm went off this morning at 4 a.m. so that I could get up, get dressed, get cleaned up, head down to the polling location at 5:30, because it's about 30 minutes from my house. Head down to the place by 5:30, have everything set up and ready to go so that we can open the polls at 7 in the morning. Troubleshoot anything that pops up. So that's how long my day's been. 5 a.m., 4 a.m. 4 a.m. I had McDonald's for breakfast. I've had about 9 pots of coffee, give or take. Whew, Lord Almighty. One minor issue with labels here at the distillery. Anyway, it's been a hell of a day. Not an overwhelmingly long day, but it's been a long day. That's for damn sure. Here in Texas, the votes, we were here in Harris County, Texas, we were casting votes for 17 constitutional amendments. I think we had a representative in District 18 who was running in a special election, and there was something like 900 people running in District 18. It was to fill the spot for Sylvester Turner, who died a few months ago. And his seat wasn't filled by Greg Abbott because he's a Democrat and Greg Abbott is a piece of shit. So there you go. That's where we're at. So this is the topic that came up yesterday, and this is one of those fun topics you can talk about with strangers. We're there at the election place. We're there for 12 hours at least. The polls are open for 12 hours. They go from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then we basically break everything down and send it to send it back to the county election commission office. They count all of the votes at NRG Stadium here in Harris County because it is the largest facility that we have in the county. That's where they collect everything up. I think that's election headquarters on most election nights. Anyway, so we have a lot of conversations while we're sitting there, and we try to have a little bit of fun with the people that come in, so that it's not just a boring drudgery of coming to vote. We welcome them in, have a little happy banter. They're coming in to vote. They don't have to be don't have to be sad about it. We can have a little bit of fun. We're allowed to. We just can't talk about election topics, right? Our oath of office as election clerks is that we will maintain the sanctity. We will not encourage anyone to vote for any individuals or ballot measures, and we will maintain the purity. This is the silliest. Maintain the purity of our elections. So we try to avoid political topics while we're certainly while we're in front of voters, but generally while we're in the polling place, because we don't want to accidentally influence anyone to vote one way or another. Not that I don't think that would actually happen at that point of the election. I mean, they're coming in to vote, right? They should have already made up their mind. But we try to avoid political topics, period. We're not going to talk about any of the candidates. We're not going to talk about any of the measures. We have our own beliefs and our own ideas and our own ideologies, and we pretty much just talk about other stuff. But somebody comes in, I'm joking around with them. I say, "Hi, welcome to democracy. Are you ready to vote today?" Sometimes I say, "Sorry, we're all out of fish." And they laugh. They're like, "I'm here to vote." And I'm like, "Oh, good, because we're all out of fish. If you were coming for the fish, you would have to come back at 9. You know, the polls close at 7. They can't come back at 9. Anyway, I tell one person, "Hi, welcome to democracy. Thank you for coming out." And one of my fellow clerks leans over and says, "We're not a democracy, we're a republic." Oh, and this is one of my favorite party conversations, because when you say this, you're not fun at parties. This is something for people who to say that they are not fun at parties. They're trying to draw the distinction between our constitutional republic and a pure democracy. And of course, we're not a pure Greek republic or Greek democracy. We are a republic. But here's the really fun part. Republics, you know, since our representatives in the republics are elected by a popular vote of the people, well, it's a democratic form of government, right? I mean, it is not a pure democracy, but it is a democracy. Little d democracy, not big D democracy. Or, yeah, I think it would count as a little d democracy. A democracy, not, you know, democracy, in the sense that every decision is left up to the will of the people. If we want to do a taxes, then you have to vote. The people have to vote to do a tax. If we want to do a war, the people have to vote to do a war. If we want to do a road, the people have to vote to do a road. That is an unwieldy form of government and an unwieldy form of governance. And any large social organization is not going to be a pure big D democracy, because, you know, you need, especially if you have leaders in leadership. If you have leaders in leadership, the leaders in leadership need to be able to take action. They may feel like they need to send more action to the people, like here in the state of Texas, when we put amendments in our Constitution to compel future administrations to do the things. Like one of our ballot initiatives was setting aside money for Parkinson's research, and one of the topics that people were talking about with regards to these amendments, or most of the amendments, don't actually change the law, and most of the amendments aren't needed under the laws that we have in the state. However, an amendment is much more durable. An amendment to the Texas Constitution is much more durable than simply a law passed by the governor and the legislature here in the state of Texas. And a law is much more durable than an executive order by the governor of the state of Texas. Just like in the federal government, where an executive order from the president has the effect of being law, but it can be changed with a stroke of a pen by the next executive. So in order to have a more rigorous regime of laws and respectable uh, balance of power, so to speak, you want the legislature to be passing laws. And further, if you want to make sure that the legislature doesn't just change their mind and pass and repeal a law, you want that law to be a constitutional amendment, such as, what is a constitutional amendment that's important like that? Such as the voting age being 18, or or the definition of birthright citizenship that is codified in our Constitution. We didn't want somewhere down the line the legislatures to say, you know what, we've decided we're going to change the definition of citizenship, because they had apparently had laws defining who was a citizen and who was not. That was the whole point of the Dred Scott decision, that they could say that these people were citizens or these people weren't citizens, especially slaves. There was nothing in the Constitution dictating who was a citizen of the United States. So they had to pass a actual constitutional amendment codifying in our Constitution, if you are born in the United States, you are a citizen of the United States. Because somewhere down the line, the Reconstruction Congresses, the Reconstruction Congress here in the United States said, they could change their mind. We don't want this to happen again. They could strip citizenship away from these people down in the South. We don't want this to happen. So they forced the southern states to accept that. So all of that is a very, very long-winded way of saying we do not live in a pure democracy. That is true, where the people decide the decisions. We live in a representative democracy. More specifically, we live in a constitutional republic. And all of these things are not exclusive to each other. In fact, all of these things fall under, or can fall under, the purview of democracy. In fact, you can have authoritarian republics. You can have republics where it's not a representative republic whatsoever. You can have a republic where the representatives are appointed by the executive, by a Politburo, if you will. You can have representatives appointed by, you can have representatives appointed by a king, a god sovereign. You could have representatives in your republic give titles by birthright. Conceivably speaking, you can have a royal republic. You don't necessarily have to have a democratic republic. We, however, have a democratic representative republic. Direct democracy is hilariously impractical. That's right. I'm with you 100%, Jason. Nobody would have time to do anything, but especially in a large, complicated society. Now, if it's a small agrarian society, if you're talking like 50 people or whatever, and, most everybody keeps to themselves, most everybody has their own shit going on, you only have to get together for major decisions, like a church, for example. A church can get away with true Greek-style democracy, true democratic structure. A church can get away with that. But even then, a church appoints a head pastor, usually. They'll appoint a leading elder, or they'll appoint someone to sign contracts, to be if there's going to be any property owned, if there's going to be any financial decisions. But if it's one of those informal home church type of things, or some kind of social collective, let's say, where the collective doesn't own property necessarily. Everybody owns their own property. You're just trying to agree on a common methodology, goals, whatever. Then yeah, pure democracy, you can do that. We get together every week, we vote on things. If it's not on the agenda, we don't do it as a collective, but you can do it individually. Whatever. Fine. If it is on the agenda, we do it collectively. If it's not on the agenda, we don't do it collectively. And that separates the individual from the group. That's fine. That's doable. But once you get into large, complex societies that own property and operate on behalf of the collective, well, yeah, big D democracy it's impossible. It's unwieldy. It's ridiculously unwieldy, as you would say. 1, 2, that's 2 cases. I need 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have just finished a whole pallet of boxes. But here's the thing. It's usually one specific ideological group of people that say this nonsense. We're not a democracy. We're a republic. One specific group of ideologues that say this. And it speaks volumes about their ideology that they insist on this. And their predilection for authoritarian leaders and authoritarian style leaders. Can I pull this off the side? I think I need a different. All right, utility knife works. I am into my next batch of bottles. This is a good day. All right. Let's see. That's 1, 2. One, 2. This will be 3 cases. Get me a bottle here. Come on. Where you at? Bottle there. All right. That is 3 cases. I need 1 more case after this. 1, 2, 3. My 4th case. 2, 3, 4. And like I said, I'm just filling the bottles tonight. I can come back and I can come back tomorrow and I might label them tonight too. I'm not gonna box them tonight. Well, I might box them tonight. I'm running out of steam. I'm actively running out of steam. 1, 2, 3. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Give us your thoughts. Talk. Share info and comments. I'm gonna go to the phone just a second to see the comments. But why do you think conservatives typically pull this shit and try? Are they trying to act smart? Are they trying to discount the democratic nature of our republic? All right. I mean, what do you think? I don't know. I legitimately don't know why it's always them. It could be one of those know-it-all piece of craps. Joe Rogan style know-it-alls. Actually, dude, bro. But it always seems to be the same profile, if you will. And I'll add I'll add, if y'all have seen me around on other people's channels, you may have noticed I'm not on. I haven't been making myself available on certain other channels. I've chosen to step back and avoid the more Republicans. There it is. That's a good point. Then for city states, back when cities were like 10,000 people, socialist, authoritarian. Holy shit! I got to go catch up. Or know anything outside governance. Anything? Or yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, okay. I'm catching up. Just glad we live in a socialist, authoritarian country under our Lord and Slayer Donald J. Trump. Jesus Christ, Dustin. True democracy was meant for city states back when the cities were like 10,000 people. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that, but I also think they got to be a little bit more simple. Like the governments didn't own property, or it was a more socialistic type of governance. Oddly enough, more social and more cooperative than. I'm not. Admittedly, I'm not very familiar with Greek style democracy or Greek style governance. I get the feeling though that governments back then were somewhat more I don't want to say socialist, but somewhat more socially oriented. They provided more services. I kind of get the feeling that they provided more services to the people, entertainment wise, or there wasn't a deep separation between church and state. I don't know. I kind of had the feeling they were more involved. I guess there wasn't much separation between the wealthy people who ran government and government itself. It's like if you were a senator in Rome, you were the government. There just wasn't like a huge separation between your estate and the government estate. You know what I mean? And that's probably not. It's probably more oligarchical than socialist. But it doesn't strike me that there was a deep delineation between me and thee if I was a noble or a senator in the Roman Republic, or I don't even know what they called them in Greek, in Greece. One of the high mucky mucks. The separation of government and civil society is I think more of a modern thing. With the citizen republics, even the medieval republic, the Renaissance republics, the Italian republics, I don't think there was a huge separation between the state of Venice and the Venetian merchants or nobles of Venice. It just doesn't, the state was the royals and the nobles. Anyway, true democracy, 100,000 people. It's about as intelligent saying this isn't whiskey, it's bourbon. Oh my God, that is such a pet peeve of mine. There's somebody who sent me a message just the other day, said that they wanted to come and tour the distillery because they had a friend who bought some bourbon barrels from Scotland. It's like nails on a chalkboard. They got some bourbon barrels, I think from Scotland. I mean, maybe the empty barrels, but anyway, just nails on a damn chalkboard is what that is. Okay, this I'm gonna label one of these special reserve bottles so I don't lose track of it. The color is distinctly different on the special reserve versus the rye, but I don't want to screw this up. We're sending these out to stores, and I don't want the stores. I have in the past bottled up the wrong. I bottled up something that I thought was something else out of the wrong barrel. You don't think it's conservative, you think Republicans do it. And I think it's a fair thing, Dustin, to separate classical conservatives from Republicans, because the Heritage Foundation conservative is not the same conservative that they were in the 1980s. They have gone, iterations past their original conservative philosophy of conservative governance and moved more towards a libertarian notion of governance. And libertarianism and conservatism are not the same thing. And I feel like the conservative movement was hijacked by libertarians back in the Tea Party days. 2008, 2008, 2010, sometime in that neighborhood. That's the sense that I get, at least. These are what I need. These are next. So that's a fair statement. Not to be careful. I should be careful not to conflate Republicans and conservatives, because I do not believe that today's Republicans are exactly what you would consider to be conservatives in the Reagan sense of conservatism. Here's a fun fact that I didn't know. Jimmy Carter, when he ran for president in 1976, was a law and order conservative Democrat. And we've since painted him as a bleeding heart liberal, but he was a law and order conservative Democrat who had said out loud and in public that, people should be allowed to people should be allowed to discriminate against, who lives in their neighborhood. Defending redlining and HOA rules that actively discriminated against minorities. True story. That was a firestorm of shit that he got himself into when he said that. 1, 2, 3. One more case after this. He moved left as he ran, but in the primaries in 1975, he was a law and order conservative. I didn't know that. I am not very familiar with how, what the dynamics were when the parties shifted, and how the Heritage Foundation and Christian conservatives pulled the Republicans to the right. I didn't live it. I was a baby when it happened, so I've only read about it, and I really haven't dug deep into until this year. Earlier this year, I hadn't really dug deep into the Gerald Ford years and how Ronald Reagan fucked Jerry Ford. And basically weakened Ford to the point where Ford couldn't run for president. I was very unaware of that whole dynamic back at the 1974, 5 until 1976, when Jerry Ford decided not to run, and Jimmy Carter won the election. That was Ronald Reagan's first foray well, not his first foray into politics, because he had been governor, but he was organizing these conservative movements, the Christian Coalition. I just saw something. What the hell was that? You see something move out of the corner of your eye? Yeah. Must have been my imagination. Anyway, how he started mobilizing and organizing these Christian conservative movements, the Christian Coalition, the Heritage Foundation, and this was like old school mailing lists of people who were literally compiled addresses and had like street number, street name, address, and mailing newsletters to their followers. Crazy shit. Really, truly crazy shit. The late 70s and early 80s was a very different world. Now, these days, we would do a Facebook group, organize a Facebook group, email campaign, get to do a social media gathering thing, Zoom calls, whatever. Anyway, back to chat. Classic Dunning-Kruger. I don't have a firm enough grasp on the material to even realize. Oh, yeah. Real fun at a party, though. These are the same type of conversation you have with one of these people as the people who are like, the Civil War was really not about slavery. And you're like, oh, shit, here we go, baby. Because those are it doesn't matter how much facts and how much reality and da-da-da-da-da-da. Doesn't matter. They don't care. You can even pull up the articles of secession for every single state that declared why they were leaving the Union. They don't care. They're like, but what about like, bitch? What about their stated reasons? Anyway. Authoritarian followers make their identity around their team winning instead of reality. Yeah, but also modern politics is really about teams winning. You can say all you want, I vote for the person, not the party, but when you look at the person, they vote with their party. And you can say this person believes, they say they believe blah, blah, blah. Sure. They can say that all they want. But the fact of the matter is, they're going to vote with their party 95, 96% of the time. And if they don't, their party's not going to support them in their re-election bid. Look at how effectively Kristen Sinema ran for re-election. She's out. Look at how effectively, John Fetterman's not running for re-election this time around, I don't think, but he's on the shit list. The Democratic Party never supported Joe Manchin running for re-election. There was one other, Kristen Sinema, and one other that was just dog shit. And the party basically said, fuck off, die on fire. Can't remember who it was, though. Anyway. Yeah, what it boils down to is you can say, I'm going to vote for the person, not the party. But reality is, you're hoping that the person supports the party. You're not voting for a Republican candidate because they don't support the Republican Party. You vote for the Republican candidate because they support the Republican Party platform. And there's not a Republican candidate, not anymore at least. There was a time when this was true, but there's not a Democratic candidate or Republican candidate who's going to come out and say, you know what, I'm not going to vote with my party. They're all going to vote with their party. That's what they're going to do. And, there's no way you can know what a judge is going to do as a judge, but you can know that if it's a Democratic judge or a Republican judge, you have a pretty good idea of what ideologies they're going to hold fast to and how they're going to come at certain cases under the law. I mean, you can't ever predict the future, but you can have a pretty good idea, you know, like I can't predict what this boxer is going to do, but I have a pretty good idea that he's going to get in a boxing fight. That's what boxers do. You know, I can't predict what the lion's going to do, but he's probably going to do a thing that lions do. He's probably not going to go jump up and play baseball because lions don't play baseball. They play football. Badly in Detroit. Actually, I think they're having a pretty good season this year. But they still suck. So there's that. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about today while I was working in the elections. Let's read some more chat while I'm here. Modern GOP is hardly conservative. I mean, no jokes. Trump has just nationalized how many global companies, like Trump's policies are every definition of actual socialism. I don't. He has. The government has bought a stake in Intel, a stake in Nvidia. Yeah, the government under Trump, the government has invested, but that's not socialism. I wouldn't go so far as to say that's socialism. That's called corruption. That's pure Eastern European, Russian-style corruption, where government officials are wetting their beak and taking a percentage of transactions. That is the type of corruption that the Obama and Biden administrations tried to fight in Ukraine by removing oligarchs at the national oil and gas corporation that they have. Oligarchs that were beholden to Russian largesse. That's a whole other fucking conversation, though. It is awkward and troublesome, and if Obama had done it, you know, I mean, they lost their shit when the government bought a stake in Chrysler in order to prevent Chrysler from going bankrupt. They lost their shit. TARP money, TARF money, TAMP money, whatever the damn acronyms were. They lost their shit. Like, so now the government owns General Motors too, huh? Yep. And the government sold their stake in General Motors and made that money back and then some. But, you know, they still lost their shit about it. But God forbid we repay student loans. Anyway. Rapid Change Technology Society being conservative is just a hindrance to progress. Paul, I don't disagree necessarily, but I do believe that they're not necessarily political conservatism, but some caution necessarily should be exercised. I do miss the days of conservatism that meant cautiously moving forward and not just being beholden to big business and that's a whole nother conversation. Because in the 80s, they went through this process of loosening up all these antitrust rules and letting companies get big again. It was kind of the end of the antitrust era. They had just broken up AT&T and Ma Bell, and there were still a few big antitrust fights coming, like with uh, Microsoft, and yeah, but Microsoft deserved it. I mean, they did bring it on themselves. It was, but yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But it basically ended the era of no big corporations that could control markets. The To reduce the size of the regulatory state, you basically reduced the number of companies that needed to be regulated and allowed for bigger and bigger and bigger corporations. Gone are the days of needing 7 companies to build the Hoover Dam. You just let some companies merge up together and become one giant corporation. They could build the Hoover Dam all on their own. Y'all are giving me good stuff to talk about. This is fun. Anyway, I mean, there was a time, but there was also a time when the parties had different wings within the party. There was conservative factions and liberal factions, and the governing bodies, the leadership of the party had to balance the progressive wing. I mean, Jesus, if you look at the Republican Party's platform from the 1950s, I mean, you wouldn't believe it's the Republican Party. It is a bleeding heart progressive party. And one of the things that hello? Hello? This isn't a very big facility. So it's like when I hear something like sometimes it's literally my imagination. Like I thought I heard somebody out here in the tasting room. There's nobody in the tasting room because the door's locked. They couldn't possibly be in the tasting room. Check my office. There's nobody in my office. Shit, I'm gonna have to change my pants. Damn. Anyway, it's not a very big facility, and it's actually cooler in here in the operating room than it is in the tasting room. The tasting room is actually kind of warm right now. Anyway, back to chat. Back to chat. Um, we socialize business losses. Yep, we socialize business losses. The rapid capitalism, the heart of initiatives, and because he's forcing manufacturing back to the U.S. is not socialism. He's not forcing manufacturing back to the U.S. Manufacturing is not being forced back to the U.S. Companies are waiting it out. He's forcing taxpayers to pay taxes on imports. He's trying to bring manufacturing back, but I mean, the ship has sailed on a lot of those manufacturing jobs. But yeah, tariffs don't necessarily bring manufacturing back to the states. There are companies that had started the process of bringing manufacturing out of China because of the pandemic. The pandemic forced companies to move a lot of their production out of China because the cheap labor that they had in China was under quarantine. Fun. Um, Socialized business losses, too big to fail in the reg. Yep, I was just talking about that. Wow, we're on the same wavelength there, Paul. Antitrust breakups, the monster corporations. We need independent and U.S. based manufacturing. Take World War II. If we didn't have that base, we wouldn't have won that. Actually, I think the moral of that story there is that we should probably avoid World War III. We should continue to reinforce the international relationships that have prevented a World War III now for 100 years or nearly 100 years, and maintain our technological dominance over any other country that might conceive of starting a World War III, like China or Russia. And the reality is we're so far ahead of them militarily and technologically that there's, I don't want to say no chance in hell, because countries can do stupid things. Just ask Hamas. But I think the lesson isn't that we maintain a, I mean, we do have a domestic industrial base, but rather than maintaining a domestic industrial base, in order to wage a World War III, we should probably avoid World War III. There are other ills that a international free trade causes. Big problems. Uh, a big chunk of that has to do with the when you have freedom of capital but not freedom of labor. You know, capital can move freely all around the world, but labor can't. Then you end up with imbalances of labor, and but you also have imbalance of skills. And if you have a choice between high-tech manufacturing here in the United States versus low-tech steelwork here in the United States, for example, well, you want to ship that steelwork overseas and have high-tech manufacturing here in the United States. Yeah, sure, you want to have both, but you don't sacrifice the high-tech, knowledge-based industrial infrastructure in order to maintain a low-skill, low-knowledge-based workforce. I mean, there's a reason why we encourage kids to go to college instead of go to trade school. Like, yeah, trade school might be right for you, but we don't want that to be necessarily your first choice. We want our kids typically to shoot for what we consider to be the higher calling, you know, the higher skill level in industries, the higher skill level jobs. We want our kids to do that because ultimately that makes us a higher tech workforce and a more skilled workforce. We'd rather have a workforce of, I'll go ahead and put labels on these bottles, I guess. Then tomorrow, all I have to do is box them up. The reality is I'm probably going to end up boxing up the fucking bottles. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this camera and move it to here. And then we're going to take this and move it to here. And then you can see the actual, that's where I'm working right now. There we go. Here. That's where I'm working. So these are the special reserve bottles. These are the double oak rye bottles. And these beautiful little caramel ladies are my Texas straight whiskey bottles. All right. Let me catch up on, or try to catch up on chat a little bit. He wants you to buy TikTok and you also own a piece. Integration of the state and otherwise capitalist economy is a kind of definition of fascism. Bingo, Jason, you win the Cupid doll. A merger of corporate, a merger between the governance and business, a replacement of the administrative state with a corporate governance, so to speak, is a hallmark of fascism. That is not socialism. That's the opposite of socialism. And I've said this before, that libertarianism is the path down which leads, the path down which you find fascism. Socialism is not the path down which you find fascism. Libertarianism is the path down which you find fascism. And if you have a robust capitalist economy and a failing democratic state, you lead yourself towards fascism. Fascism is the result of a failed democracy combined with capitalism. Communism is the result of a failed democracy without a capitalist state, with a failed economy, a failed capitalist state. So after in the midst of the Great Depression, we were at great risk of a communist or a communistic revolution here, and there was a lot of communist uprisings around the world. But another hallmark of fascism is that they hate communists, and that's because it is a very hyper capitalist state, a capitalist state merged with a failed democracy. And the German state, as it rose in the 1930s, rose from the ashes of World War I in the 1930s, was basically a robust capitalistic society and a failing democracy. They were a struggling capitalistic society. I mean, don't get me wrong, their inflation was murdering them, but they had private industry, strong manufacturing, and a tradition of capitalistic a tradition of capitalist economy. Their democracy failed, and they lurched into a fascistic, well, not even fascistic, they lurched into a fascist state. And when you have a circumstance, a situation where you have a robust capitalist economy, look at Russia. Russia did not have a robust capitalist economy. They had a communist state. And when the communist state failed, they tried to enact a market-based economy. The market-based economy took root. It took root, but it was slow to address the ills of society, and then their democratic state failed. They had a capitalistic state, a proto-capitalist state, and their democracy failed, and you end up with Putin, who he's an authoritarian dictator, a democratically elected, so to speak, in fake democratic elections, but authoritarian dictator at the head of an oligarchical kleptocracy. I mean, if you want to throw around $5 words, but what it boils down to is the mechanisms of state in Russia are handled by corporations that are headed by Putin and his friends. The administrative state in Russia is corporate. Russia is a proto-fascistic state. They're not communist. They're not exactly free market capitalist, but they are capitalist by design, and the capitalists control the government. Russia is fascist in the traditional sense. In the modern sense, we call Russia a kleptocracy, an oligarchy, whatever $9 term you want to attach to it. But if it quacks like a duck and waddles around, well, my friends, it's a duck. So, yep. Government involvement in private industry. Socialism is where the workers control the means of production. Well, communism is where the workers control the means of production, and the state is run by the workers. The state owns the means of production. Socialism is where private companies, private property is owned by, is publicly owned. Am I hitting on that right? I'm saying that wrong. I mean, workers control the means of production, but the means of production are separate from government. There we go. Workers control the means of production, or at least part of the means of production, and those means of production maintain their independence from the government. Communism is where there's no difference between the workers who control the means of production and the government itself. The government controls the means of production. All right. Back over here. Who just texted me? What's up? What the fuck? There's any way. All right. I'll check that later. Some kind of text. It's not family. Anyway, where are we at in chat? Mistake in Intel, if I'm not mistaken. First and foremost, using foreign-owned social media has not autonomy and therefore expects information. Mr. Jiggs is in the house. What's up, Mr. Jiggs? I have no idea how far back I am in chat, by the way. Trump was the state to own a part of his TikTok part of the deal. To be a uniquely independent U.S. entity-owned platform. Let's be honest, people are stupid, not because they're stupid, but because they're lazy and would rather have someone tell them the talking points instead of think for themselves. I don't disagree with that. Not for 1 second. I need to catch up on chat, but I want to finish these bottles real quick. All right, 3 more bottles for the back label. Then I'll go ahead and do the front label on this. I really do need to have all of these bottles labeled before I leave here tonight. I really do. So I'm going to go ahead and label up the rest of them. Probably be about another hour, I think. I have no idea. What time is it? It's almost midnight. Oh, Jesus Christ. I have a meeting at 10. Oh, all right. Catch up on chat. Fast. Team and college campuses are by far blue. Therefore, these weak people that fall in line just to belong are insane and weak. College campuses. That's a good point. College campuses. There is a significant feature of college campuses where. What the hell is that? That is a dart, I think. There's a lot of bleeding heart liberal nonsense. I'm not gonna disagree with that. There's a lot of college kids that are, just crazy. But there's also a lot of college kids that you go to college and you learn stuff, and then you become the person you're going to be. And it's not because of indoctrination. It's not because of nonsense nonsense propaganda. It's literally because you encounter people who are different from you for the first time and realize that your sheltered existence isn't the end-all be-all. You get exposed to different ideas. You get you learn about the world around you that you didn't get to learn about in high school. You learn about ways to think, philosophy, sociology, history. You learn about history that you don't get taught in high school. If the first time you're learning about historical events in college make you feel uncomfortable with the history that learned about in your country, it's because in high school, a lot of the history you learn is propaganda. And in college, it's not controlled by the state in the same way it's controlled in high school. That's a fact of life. There's a reason they don't teach you in Texas history in middle school about landowners' desire to maintain the slave trade in the state of Texas, and therefore their desire to reestablish the Constitution of 1824, which allowed for the maintenance of the institution of slavery in the provinces and states of Mexico. They don't teach you that. There's a reason they don't teach you that. There's a reason they don't teach you about the Articles of Secession, for the Civil War in the South. There's a reason they don't teach you about a lot of the things they don't teach you about. And part of it's just because they don't have time to teach you. And part of it's just because they don't want to. But if you go to college and you learn about that stuff and, all these goddamn kids are becoming liberals, they don't want alternative points of view being presented. No, they don't have any problem with alternative points of view. They have a problem with bullshit and lies. And if you're not allowed to, there was a time back in the early 2000s when we maintained community standards at colleges, and conservatives bitched and cried about having kids needing a safe space and going back to get their blankies while they're in college. Burp, 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 burp. No, the reality is they did not want to tolerate lies and bullshit on campuses. And certain people worked hard to reverse that for the next 20 years, 10 years. And one of those people is now dead. I mean, there was a time when we were, when we had a little bit of respect for the idea of knowledge, and it was framed as, well, they're not allowing for alternative viewpoints on their college campuses. Alternative viewpoints are one thing, but lies and bullshit is another thing entirely. And that's actually one of the topics that was last episode's topic when I talked on the Old Humble Happy Hour. I went into the anatomy of a scam because I have been dealing with a particular scammer known as the People's Republic Source Company, PRSC. And they tried to scam me out of several $1,000s, and I told them to go pound sand and suck my dick and fuck off, scammer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I told them exactly what was on my mind. And I went down, I talked about the anatomy of a scam and how they do what they do. And I related it to conspiracy theories, because I don't think conspiracy theories are vastly different. Speaking of bullshit and lies and nonsense, I don't think conspiracy theories, at least the modern iteration of conspiracy theories, is vastly different from just your typical scam. It's somebody trying to get you to believe a lie in order to make money off of that lie, especially in the world of YouTube, but formerly in the world of just plain old newsletters. They want you to buy their cryptid newsletter or whatever crap they're trying to sell, and they're just pushing bullshit and lies. The bullshit and lies has moved from Mothman Chronicles to jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams. But it's the same bullshit and nonsense. It's just now, instead of making the money by selling you a newsletter at 25 cents a copy, they're selling you, trying to get eyeballs on their YouTube channel to get a cent for every 1,000 views or whatever. I don't think there's a vast difference in this day and age between pure scams and conspiracy theory. And when you talk about organizations like Heritage Foundation and organizations like Turning Point USA that present themselves as one thing and arguably are something else. I mean, there's that one dude who would go on campuses to debate college students. He wasn't debating anybody. He was presenting well polished, well polished, workshopped ideas, market tested, marketing group, focus group tested ideas that he would bring to a campus and quote unquote debate, have a discussion with somebody about, get thoroughly embarrassed and shut down with that discussion, take the video footage of that thoroughly embarrassing and dismantling discussion, and then bring it back to his office and put his marketing team on it and figure out how to present that in another way that didn't make him sound like a complete and total dumbass. And in the early 2000s, that shit wasn't allowed on campus. In the early 2000s, they maintained community standards in public campuses that said, you can't bring this bullshit and nonsense on campus. We don't want to hear about it. And what's his name? Mayorkas, whatever that dude's name was. Michael Mayorkas, Miklos, whatever his fucking name was, who got run off of campus again and again and again and again. And Ted Cruz, who got run off of campus again and again and again and again. They fought hammer and tong to make sure that they could spread their bullshit and nonsense on campus. And eventually managed to get their little their bullshit parade back on campuses. And the hope is at some point good common sense will return to the world, and it's not so much a bastion of liberalism but a bastion of thought and critical thinking, and a place where people can sniff out bullshit and lies. And that's what college campuses should be. A place where you do not have the freedom. I mean, you have the freedom to present whatever ideas and ideals you want to, but you don't have the freedom to present bullshit as nutritional supplements. I do not hold fast to the idea that all thoughts and ideas need to, all opinions do not be respected. Do not need to be respected. All ideas may be valid. Your opinions may be valid. Your opinion may be valid. It may be a valid opinion, but that doesn't mean it's respectable, and it needs to be respected. There are plenty of cuckoo bird ridiculous ideas, and they should be called cuckoo bird ridiculous ideas. And you shouldn't feel bad about calling someone who holds fast to the idea that the earth is flat a fucking idiot. You shouldn't feel bad about that, because they are a fucking idiot. I mean, that's like feeling bad about calling a shark a fish. A shark is a fucking fish. It has gills and swims in the water. It's a fish. I mean, if you're going to be upset about being called what you are, then maybe you should quit being that thing, because it's a choice. I mean, nobody talked these people into being fascists. They chose to be fascists. Nobody talked Charlie, what's his face, into being a tool for the Heritage Foundation. He chose to do that. That was a life choice that he made. Nobody talked Ted Cruz into being whatever the fuck kind of blowfish he is. He chose to do that. That was his decision. And I don't know. It's just it's frustrating, because it's like, you want to respect, like you want to see these people and as people, and good decent people have good hearts, but then they go and say some vile, disgusting bullshit, and you're like, yeah, you're just not a good person. Even if it's just something benign. Like, I came to like I was talking to somebody today. I came to a stop at a stop sign. There was no one around. I come to the stop at the stop sign, and the next thing I know, there's lights behind me. I'm getting pulled over. I'm like, oh, so you ran the stop sign? She's like, well, I came to a stop, but I rolled through it. I said, okay, so you ran a stop sign. She's like, well, nobody was around. Like, okay, so you ran the stop sign because you thought no one was around? Does that make it okay? She's like, there was nobody around. I'm like, well, you didn't see the cop, so how do you know there was nobody around? She said, I'm just going to argue this with you. I'm like, okay, so you're just a good person when people are watching? Is that how it is? So you're not a good person. But, everybody else needs to follow the law, or else you're gonna deport them, right? And that was kind of the end of the conversation. She quit talking to me. I don't think she said anything else to me for the rest of the night, but that's okay, because I want to see these people as good people, but then they go and show that they're not good people, and it's like, I'm at least willing to admit that I'm not a good person. I try, but that's what confession is for, is so that you can confess your sins and repent. Anywho, on with the show. This steaming pile of hilarious bullshit that is. Campuses are mostly drink events with nearly no politics. Oh, that's so not true. I don't respectfully agree. If you are blue and DEI specific, you don't have friend. You have a camp. Have you been to campus lately? The peer pressure is on politics now, not drugs. You're probably not entirely wrong. My son is on a college campus right now, like literally right now as we speak. And there are, like, he has explored a couple of the organizations on campus, and boy, he has told me some shit. You can talk about all the peer pressure you want, but there's one organization on campus where, like, the former president of the organization said that they weren't conservative enough, so she literally left and started a young fascists party. Shit you not. I believe the school shut that shit down. It's a private school. They can shut that shit down if they want to. I don't know if they've been able to do it at a public school, but they did not tolerate that shit. I don't know how much peer pressure there is one way or the other. I think there's a little bit of peer pressure going both directions. There's social groups that pull kids in both directions on this stuff. It is not a pure liberal marketplace on college campuses. The Heritage Foundation and Turning Point USA has turned college campuses into a full-on ideological battleground, because they realized that college campuses were a place where kids could go and learn, and they were losing the future because college kids were going and learning how to think and turning away from their bullshit and nonsense. So they were like, we got to get them young, lock it in, the same way that Camel cigarettes did back in the day. Now, when I was in college, oh my God, that was back in the day. Back in the 90s, there were still people that would go around with their little duffel bags full of cigarettes, and all you had to do was give them your email address, and you got a free pack of cigarettes. Shit, that was like the way to get cigarettes back in the 90s in college. Give them your email address. And then boom, there's a pack of Camels. Unfiltered Camels. That's how it was. All right. There's a commercial. Methodist Hospital? Yep. There's some pockets, but if you go to the East Coast or West Coast, you won't see that. They're still the minority. Socialism isn't owning the means of production. Socialism is when the workers control the means of production and it's still privately owned. I already said that. I clarified myself back in the day, back an hour or so ago. A redistribution of wealth is not socialism. Socialism is not the redistribution of wealth. The redistribution of wealth is called economics. Economics is the redistribution of wealth. And it will either be redistributed equitably or it will be redistributed by concentrating it among a few. And it depends on how aggressive your government is in encouraging companies to distribute that wealth equitably. Because back in the day, back when we had a thriving middle class in the post-World War II economic boom here in the United States, our government was very aggressive and very energized at ensuring that companies distributed the wealth amongst their employees. And we had very, very robust unions that made sure that companies took care of their employees. But then companies started breaking unions in the late 70s and early 80s with the rise of, you guessed it, the Heritage Foundation and conservative politics. That is one of those things that you can, I don't think Reagan did it on purpose, but Reagan certainly facilitated the downfall of the union. I mean, they were kind of on the way down, I think, when Reagan started. I don't think it was part of a grand plan that Reagan put in place, but anti-union propaganda certainly picked up a pace in the 80s. And to be fair, union policies, union negotiation policies, I think went a long ways toward damaging American industrial capacity by insisting on pay instead of benefits, and tying that pay or tying those benefits that they did have to employment, instead of truly socializing the benefits, saying, okay, we want health insurance, but we want to make sure our health insurance is paid by the company. We want a pension, but we want to make sure the pension is paid by the company, as opposed to we want a pension and we want that to be served by the federal government. Make sure Social Security is well funded and paid for. They were, somewhat selfish with their negotiating tool or their negotiating tactics, which led to problems for companies. A lot of companies went bankrupt under pension obligations, which led indirectly to a move towards consolidation in the industries. And consolidation in the industries led to more powerful corporations, which led to a further decline in unions and led to cascading effects. Cascading effects which were not prevented by conservative ideologues, but rather were encouraged by them because they hated unions. It all just kind of, I'm not so cynical as to say it was a grand plan. I just think it was a set of unfortunate events that certain people took advantage of. Anyway, where are we? While in socialism you do have redistribution, doesn't mean you're redistributing wealth. Blah 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 blah. I mean, all economics is a redistribution of wealth. I mean, if you're trying to suggest to me that capitalism isn't a redistribution of wealth, but socialism is, you're full of horse shit. Uh, I mean, all economics, all policy in general is a redistribution of wealth. It's either going to go from you to them or from them to you. And if you don't believe me, just look at the charts. Look at the charts. I mean, it is what it is. That's what economics is. I mean, I spend money and somebody gets that money. And then that money gets sent back to workers and it gets sent up the chain into the corporation and it gets reinvested into the economy. And that wealth gets redistributed from me to every time I buy something. My wealth is redistributed from me to others. Every time someone buys something from me, their wealth is redistributed back to me. I mean, that's what commerce is. It's not just socialism. All government structures, all economic structures are in some way, shape, or form a redistribution of wealth. It is what it is. All right, I have come to the end of the roll of front labels for my double oak rye. Look at that. Bum, bum, bum. And that may not be the accurate that may not be the clinical definition or whatever. But it's the practical definition. It's the actual definition. It is what it is. All right. I got a little bit less than a case to do, and then I'm going to go home. This has been fun. I appreciate you guys staying up with me and giving me someone to talk to and something to talk about. Otherwise, I'd have just been sitting here in silence. That is not. All right, I gotta find the right set of labels real quick. That is straight whiskey, special reserve, Boomtown bourbon, straight whiskey, double oak rye. My labels are back here. Straight whiskey. There's a box. There's some rye. That's straight whiskey labels. Here's some paper. Here's some paper. There's a roll of Boomtown bourbon, double oak rye. What are we looking at? Front labels, right? Here's some front labels of the double oak rye. 500 fresh labels. Let's go! Woo! All right. 500 fresh labels. My very high-tech label stand here. I'm getting tired too. It's been a long day. Such a long day. Put you there. Put you on my high-tech label stand. Put my back. I should have gotten a roll of back labels too, but I'll get those when it's time. All right, where are we at on chat? We're back up to 6 people in the chat. Say hi in chat, everybody. Had a 90% top tax rate. Yep, America was great. Let's do that again. I agree. Let's do that again. Without the racism, though. Let's do the 1950s without the segregation. Let's do the good parts, the parts that we knew worked. Soviet Union started as a Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Soviet Union started as a Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, but it was always communistic. The North Korea is the North Korean Korean Democratic Republic, but it's not democratic. Two different things. moved to communism when that just because Russia had those objectives doesn't mean the definition of socialism. Ionizing radiation has low vitamin content. I don't know what that means. There's no middle class blue collar here anymore. I don't disagree with that. That's pretty true. If anything, blue collar is growing. There has to be a middle ground. Plumbers and carpenters would disagree. Demand for blue collar work is huge right now. I also agree with that. The demand for blue collar work is huge right now. We sure use more tradespeople here, but most of them make a pretty good wage these days, and that isn't. Yes, tradespeople do make a good wage. I don't disagree with that, but we also, as a policy, we don't want a nation full of plumbers. We want high-tech industries. The future of, like, there's always going to be a need for, let's just go with plumbers. Let's just narrow it down to just plumbers. There's always going to be a need for plumbers. We're always going to have plumbing, right? But here's the way I look at it. If you work in AI for 10 years, you can quit AI and go learn how to be a plumber. If you work in plumbing for 10 years, you get out of plumbing, you're 35 years old. Are you going to go learn how to do AI? And what I mean to say is, you can teach a skill, a trade to just about anyone at any point in their life. But a high-tech, high-skill information job, you need to start that early and adapt with the industry as the industry adapts. You don't come into it 25 years after the fact and then figure it out on the fly. But like right now, for example, I'm 50. I can go learn how to be a plumber like that tomorrow. I can learn how to be an electrician. I can get a book and learn how to be an electrician. I can go enter the trade, so to speak. I can learn that shit. You can learn that shit. The high-tech world of IT, that is not like old style IT, the hardware stuff. Yeah, but they're learning that stuff in middle school right now. The coding, the robotics, they're learning that stuff as middle schoolers, especially overseas. Like, you got little Chinese elementary school kids learning how to code and build robots and develop IT. You can't just teach that to somebody as a second or third or fourth career. But if we need plumbers, fuck, I can learn how to be a plumber. You can teach a PhD how to be a plumber, but I don't know if you can't necessarily teach a plumber how to be a PhD. I can learn how to cut hair, but I'm not going to ask my hairdresser to do my accounting. You know what I mean? Like, there's a directionality to this. And I don't mean to sound like elitist, but that does in fact sound elitist. But it's not. It's more of a defense of the knowledge-based economy than it is an indictment of the skilled trades. I mean, the skilled trades are, they're vital, they're important, but you can learn a fucking skilled trade. You can learn that shit. 40 minutes behind. Jesus, where are we? I'm now sitting down at my computer. I'm gonna go picture in picture real quick. I'm here at the computer. Hello, boys and girls. Where are we? I'm just gonna. I don't want to skip over chat, but the fact is, I'm probably going to skip over chat. Am I that far behind? I saw 40 minutes. Brit Bart 2.0. Agree to disagree. I see he was mostly having good faith discussion. That was when I talked about that dude who was on campuses who got shot. He wasn't having good faith discussions. He was not having good faith discussions. He was not mostly having good faith anything. He was 100% presenting a narrative, a well honed, market tested narrative. And he was getting his ass. If he was having good faith discussions, every time he got his ass handed to him, he would have changed his position. But he never changed his position. So, which means he was not having a good faith discussion. He was never having a good faith discussion. He was the mouthpiece for an organization that was pushing a specific point of view. Holy shit, I'm way behind on chat. I was a libertarian. Oh my God. All right, I see blue collar. This is where I was, right? This is where I am. 11:30. It's 12:18. This is about where I was, right? It's purely using 50 okay. All right, I lost where I was on my phone in chat. Okay, that's about where I was, about 11:30. I have timestamps here on the computer. All right, let's catch up, shall we? Plumbers and carpenters would disagree. I remember seeing that comment specifically in chat. Use more tradespeople here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just finished talking about all this. Yeah, cool. Certain demand for those workers, and they're getting paid well. Blue collar workers, a person who performs manual labor or works in skilled trades such as construction, manufacturing, maintenance. College isn't useless just because they also offer useless degrees. As long as they offer back. Well, no. College. College education is not intended as. This is a great segue from the trades talk. Like, if you go to mechanics school, for example, you go to ITT Tech or whatever, DeVry is what it was back when I was in high school. You go to one of these schools, like they train you to be an airline mechanic or a diesel mechanic or whatever, and then they have a job fair for companies looking for diesel mechanics, and it's intended to be a trade to work type of transition, a private school that teaches you the trade, the basics of the trade, and then you get your first job straight out of that school. A university education is not necessarily like that. There are some universities that try to help you get employment. Most public universities do that, but it's not intended to be a one-to-one analogy. I would rather have someone who has gotten a degree, not because the degree shows a competency in the base level of whatever the task is, but because it says they know how to think. And they know how to think, they know how to problem solve, they know how to work their way through a series of thought exercises in order to get from A to Z. Yes, it helps to have the accounting credentials if I'm hiring an accountant. Yes, it helps to have engineering credentials if I'm hiring an engineer. I want a degreed engineer. But if I'm hiring salesmen, I would rather have a salesman with an art history degree than a salesman who dropped out of high school, because it shows that they know how to think and think their way through a problem. Now, they still need to show me that they know how to sell, but if we're just looking at credentials, I absolutely, I want to look at some of these people. I don't necessarily make a college degree part of the criteria when I was hiring staff recently, but if I'm looking at a sales management position as opposed to just a sales position, I'm absolutely looking for somebody who has sales experience and a college degree, because it tells me that they know how to think their way through a problem, or at least it tells me that they have practice at thinking their way through a problem and a broad based education, a broad based knowledge. Um, that's the value that I see in it. I don't see it as a useless degree. I see it as an exercise and training in thinking, and developing that skill, that muscle of thinking. I may not do my show tomorrow night. It's late. Maybe Tuesday nights are a better time to do the happy hour than it is than Wednesday nights. Maybe I do my happy hour on Tuesday nights. Um, uh, Fascism wants total control, where communism is. I That's one way of looking at it, but I think both fascism and communism both want total control. Communism wants total control of the means of production. Fascism uses coercion to have total control of production, because production, while it's still privately held, is controlled by governing entities. There's no daylight between the private corporations and the public service, whereas in communism, the private industry is owned by the public. They are very similar in their operation, but very different in their structure. Um, White collar jobs are best lower middle class. We don't feel lower middle class. The middle class is considered blue collar, and I feel like you disagree with 100%. Middle class is sinking, the upper class is rising. Low paying white collar, putting cuffs on a shirt is a hell of a skill. Putting cuffs on a shirt is a hell of a skill. That is true. Jobs that don't require college but do require skills and training, laissez faire. No government influence, so I guess I am more of a libertarian. There should be little or no government involvement in anything, period. Yeah, that's something that I really can't get. Libertarian point of view really works really well until there's two people. Little or no government involvement only works if you're by yourself on an island without any social connection whatsoever. Because as soon as there's two people, you immediately have property disputes. And as soon as you have property disputes, you need somebody to arbitrate that property dispute. And that's what governments are for. To protect the peace and ensure prosperity. And the benefits of liberty are handed down to our progeny. Anyway, this loons about government. I am at 11:43 and it is 12:25. I am trying to catch up. I might just cut it off because I really kind of need to go home. One can be a practical libertarian. I disagree. All libertarians want the cops to show up if 20 people with guns show up to take their stuff. Like I just said, whenever there's a dispute, libertarians suddenly become big government socialists. More centric until both parties. You can't be libertarian and centric at the same time. You can't be no government involvement and centrist. Those two things aren't compatible. A lot. Nowhere near what we have now is nowhere near what the creators have in mind. What we have now is nowhere near what the creators have in mind. I'm going to go with founding fathers instead of creators, but that's just a language difference. I would argue that by the end of the French Revolution, this is very much what the founders had in mind, with the notion that a government separated from the whims of the masses. And mind you, at this time, we still had founders involved in governance. This was Thomas Jefferson. This was, I think Hamilton was still alive at this point. The founders were still involved in governance at this point in time. And at the end of the French Revolution scared the piss out of American founding fathers. because the French Revolution had literally the people rising up, taking control of the government, and chopping off everyone's head. This was a wake up call of what could happen if governance fell into the wrong hands or the hands of the rabble. Uh, and it was at that point they kind of worked to reinforce the separation, the republican nature, or the representative nature of our republic, and less the republican nature of our republic. More of the representative and less of the democratic. Um, you know, uh, but that really is a broader discussion to be had. Um, Gen Z males are the most conservative at the same age as any generation ever. I think you might be onto something there, Dustin. I think you might be right. Gen Z males are remarkably conservative, but not. Yeah, I think you might be onto something. That might be an accurate statement. That might be a statement that I could agree with. Let's see here. Okay. All right, here we go. Um, where are we? This is a liberal skew. That doesn't say there isn't a liberal skew for young people in general, but it's always been the creators, white slave owners who wanted to be free. Carlin was a prophet. Yeah, yeah, you're not wrong. This doesn't change that most kids don't know or care about politics. Disagree. When there's a protest on campus, there's so many that attend and support, but mainly because they're looking to fit in and belong. Uh, I don't know if it's just because they're looking to fit in and belong. I, I don't buy into that they're just doing it to fit in and belong. I think that there's a lot of, there's some of them, obviously, but there's a lot of these kids that truly care about the status of their country and really want. I mean, I, well, there weren't a whole lot of rallies at the University of Houston back in the day, but there was a lot of discussion about this sort of stuff back then. Where this is back when uh, Bill Clinton and his Whitewater scandals and the Monica Lewinsky shit. There was a lot of discussion about stuff like that on campus. Um, we talked about it frequently. It was a frequent topic of conversation. I'm not going to say it's the only thing we ever talked about, but we did talk about it frequently. Um, obviously, somewhere, it could it could also be something they care about. Yeah. 3% of students who protest. It's another pile of ridiculous white right wing cope. uh, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that either. Um, it's the whole if we lost the elections because it was rigged bullshit. Blame on COVID, blame on technology, but thinking literally, critical thinking people don't think, they react. Yeah. Let's keep going. Same in 1000 as it was in 1500 as it is today. Blame whatever straw man you grasp at. Humans aren't changing. Use litmus test asking who pays for tariffs. Works. They're finding stupid things today, but we're all the same as ever. Where are we at? We still got 6 people hanging out and chatting with us. I appreciate that. I'm going to try. I am endeavoring to catch up by 1 o'clock so that I can wrap this up and go home. More Republicans in California than any other state but Texas. Yeah. That sounds about right. There's also more people in California than any other state. So there's that too, I suppose. Uh, um, people in blue states don't admit red. They're red. People in blue states don't admit they're red because they, fucking hell. That's like saying people in Texas don't admit that they're liberal. Like that's not true. That's not true. They do. There's liberals in Texas. There's Republicans in California. There's conservatives in California. There's liberals in Texas. There's liberals in Florida. Uh, it, yeah, that's not saying that everybody in the state is a Republican or everybody in the state just because that's how the politics are in the state. That's just how it is. Um, and there's a whole lot more to discuss about that too. Um, Anytime engage in real debate, he got taken apart like a broken clock. Oh yeah, that dude. Yeah, we're on that. This is where the that dude monologue, right? Um, when that person did an actual debate in UK, he was so cooked. Yeah, that is, yeah, preach. Uh, um, I've said my piece about that dude. Mind you, as good faith 30-year-old can 18-year-old can debate. Yeah, he never, it was never a debate. I mean, he listened, like he performatively listened. He sat there and made a show of listening. Put down the microphone and would listen. Um, he was very well coached. He was very well taught of how to do the things. Let me does that help? Yeah, that's a little bit better. I need better lighting in here. I have a light, but anyway, wasn't even the same state he was in. Wasn't even in the same state he was in. Good faith, farther away than Jesus Christ. Um, okay, but differing opinion. If you can bring a logical fact-filled argument, then do. But if you're acting on emotion, this is not a real argument. Find yourself among the facts, not the BS. Eh. Your perception of the work product is very incorrect. I've seen him in long-form settings, not edited. In bad faith was his editing work. It was Breitbart 2.0 with a smaller head. Yeah, who's that Greek dude that got run off? Something it's not Mayorkas. Um, who was that Greek dude who got run off college campuses? Uh, Milo, fucking Milo Yiannopoulos. Milo Yiannopoulos. That's the dude I was thinking of. That dude. He was he was that dude before that dude was that dude. And yeah, they were not good faith. Nothing about what any of these people did was good faith. Nothing. Especially this last dude. This last dude was the head of a multi-million-dollar corporation. If he was ever arguing in good faith, that means he was open to other opinions and changing his mind. And he could not possibly change his mind because that would put millions of dollars of contributions to his organization at risk. If at any point there was an argument presented to him and he said, "Oh, you know what? You're right. It's wrong to question the personhood of somebody just because I find what position they're in while they pee to be icky." He'd have lost millions of dollars in contributions a year. He was the head of a multi-million dollar organization. Nothing he did was in good faith. Nothing. He was no more operating in good faith than Joel Osteen. He was no more operating in good faith than uh, Alex Jones. He wasn't operating in good faith any more than uh, uh, Tucker Carlson or any of these other fucking charlatans. He was never operating in good faith, and to suggest otherwise is not to understand what was going on at any of these stupid events. But enough about that guy. That guy's a piece of crap. The world is better off without him. You like Kirk, but he was an antagonizer. If you don't challenge the status quo, then you're worse than the problem. And see, here's the thing: his organization was part of a focused effort at cultural change. The Heritage Foundation has been at the tip of the spear of this effort of cultural change since the 1970s. This process of cultural change, this idea, and just one example of it is the notion that the Second Amendment protects our right as individuals to have personal firearms for personal protection. That was not a notion, that is not the legal understanding of the Second Amendment prior to, say, 1985-ish. Not even through the 90s, because in the 1990s, in the 1980s and 1990s, we had a ban on assault weapons. We had a ban on certain types of firearms to be sold in the United States. It was a perfectly acceptable notion that this is a thing that we could do. And it was a concerted effort over the course of 40 or so years to change the thinking behind that, to have a cultural change, a concerted effort to make a cultural change of how we thought about that particular freedom. That is what TPUSA was doing. That is what TPUSA was part of. They were part of this effort of cultural change. They weren't good faith debaters. They weren't anything like a good faith debate. They were presenting presenting a point of view in order to change the culture. That was their stated goal. That was their mission, to change the culture of the United States in a way that made the United States different from the United States that they knew when they grew up. They weren't a good faith debater, not even remotely. They weren't a good faith debate at all, any more than taking a bath, any more than you take a bath because you think you're clean. They had no interest whatsoever in having their opinion be challenged. They were challenging they were working to move the Overton window, challenge the status quo, and change the culture as they saw it. That was their goal. That was what they were working towards. That's what they were doing. And that was the stated mission. That's what they were doing. And that is not what good faith is. Good faith is, hey, here's a topic. What do you think about it? I'm not sure about it. This is what I think about it. Tell me what you think. And then kind of going at it, going, okay, I kind of see how you like that. But that's not what they were doing. They were taking these arguments where they were getting shellacked and the floor wiped with them. They were taking these arguments and going back and workshopping them and honing them and changing them and developing them and cleaning up and making it better so that they could go to the next campus and roll out the refreshed idea and roll out the new talking points. That's all they were doing. That's all they ever did. This was not some guy showing up and saying, hey, talk to me about what y'all think about this. This was not John Edwards going on a listening tour and saying, hey, tell me about the problems that y'all are facing. This was a snake oil salesman saying, hey, what is it that hurts? And they go, oh, my back hurts. And he goes, oh, well, I got this thing that'll help your back. It's this elixir that helps your back. It helps your knees. It helps your joints. It helps your bad breath. It saves you from relationships that last too long. That's all they were. Snake oil salesmen. Trying to change the opinions of the people that they were engaging with in order to sell their product, which was cultural change. That's it. That's it. So, we can disagree with what he was trying to do, but you can also disagree that the ocean is salty. Sorry to be the one to be the harbinger of bad news in reality. Nobody on the left wants to talk it. No one on the left want to talk it out and only express their opinion without facts or arguments. Is that from the same person who was saying that Charlie Kirk? No, Top Shelf. William Hall, were you saying that Charlie Kirk was yeah, yeah, you're over here defending Charlie Kirk and saying that liberals don't want to talk about facts. Okay. Yeah, got it. um I am all in for conversation discussion, but as a critical self-thinking person, you'll have to convince me again you can't think for yourself. As weather free up there, blah blah blah. All absorption of discourse and alternative views. Uh, I am all about alternative views as well. I mean, it is very interesting to me to hear people from different backgrounds talk about reality, but differing views and bullshit and nonsense are two different things. Uh, tell me all the ghost stories you want, but yeah, ghosts don't exist. I was talking to a guy today um, who was talking about how that back when Ted Cruz was running against Beto O'Rourke, the machines were changing votes, and I saw it happen, and we had to destroy ballots. I'm like, okay, so I don't doubt that you saw it happen, but the machine wasn't changing the vote. We had little rocker dials to select your vote in the machine. It was a little dial on the machine, and you spin it, and it goes up and down on the menu. The machine didn't change the vote. You had that dial, and it wasn't set. It like bumped when you hit. Like I have this guy selected, and you go to hit the button, and it pops down to the next guy. The machine didn't do it. You did it. Nobody accidentally voted for the wrong person. The machines didn't change the votes. That never happened. And the funny thing is, there were two people next to me, and they both said that the machine switched the vote. This one said it didn't happen to her, happened to a friend of hers. This one said it happened to him. She said it switched from Beto or from Ted Cruz to Beto, and he said it switched from Beto to Ted Cruz. It was fascinating to hear two people tell bullshit stories that contradicted each other. Fascinating to hear alternative ideas and alternative histories, but then have a real explanation of what happened. Like, also, Bigfoot doesn't exist. It's, Bigfoot doesn't exist, and steel beams uh, can, in fact, get softened by jet fuel. I mean, that's, there's a reality that we live in. Ideological thinking, there needs to be more discussion. Reagan sure didn't stop it on purpose. Air traffic controller. Yeah, no. What I meant by that was that he didn't. I don't think he did it on purpose, but I think he didn't, like, when it was as it began to happen. He was like, "Yeah, I'm cool with this." Kind of a byproduct of. He's like, "Oh, this is a happy byproduct. I'm okay with this." And he maybe leaned in and tried to make it more, make it happen more. Anyway, um, is now really the end game of what Reagan set in motion. It's very much the end game of what Reagan set in motion. But see, here's the thing: I don't, I don't think it's a result of conservative principles. I think it's a result of the betrayal of conservative principles. And by that I mean, when you like when when you take sugar water and you boil the water and you get syrup, and then you boil it some more and you get a thicker syrup, and then you boil it some more and you end up with caramel. Like, you just wanted a concentrated sugar. You just wanted a concentrated sugar syrup, right? You didn't want caramel. But I think what the Republicans have done is they've taken the conservative movement and they've worked to make it more pure and more pure and more pure, and now they're stuck with something that they didn't intend to have. They've given up the notion. They've misquoted Reagan so much when he said, "Government isn't the solution. Government is the problem." Or that's not what he said. Like, those are the words that he said, but that's not what he said. He said was, in this present time, government isn't the solution, government's the problem. In that, in this present time. But they've misquoted it so much that they've come to smell their own farts so many times that now they believe that he said government's the problem, so we just starve the beast and kill the government, and then we've solved all of our problems. But that's how you get a fascism. And the conservatives have done that again and again and again and again, to the point where they were like, oh, well, if cutting taxes worked one time, let's do it again, and let's do it again, and let's do it again, and let's do it again, to the point where they, the marginal utility has ceased to work. And that's not to say that the Democrats know what they're doing, because the Democrats still don't know how to speak to farmers. They still don't know how to speak to labor. They don't know how to put together a farmer labor coalition of people that make this country run. They talk like intellectual university professors, and they denigrate the trades. They walk this line of high tech, and they don't know how to speak true appreciation to the trades. They don't know how to speak to men and protect men's rights in the same way that they want to protect the 1% of trans rights. They don't know how to speak to. They're so focused on their cause that they don't know how to speak to people, and they end up losing the argument. I could be fucking boxing up this whiskey right now, but I need to get through chat. I can do all this shit in the morning. Unions had their place in the time and day they were created, but their own self-concern created another problem. And I don't think we outgrew unions. I think unions failed to change with the times. I think they were a victim of their own success, and they failed to grow with the times. And we could do a whole lot better now with unions than we did. But there could be a different imagining of unions, like office workers union. They don't have to be labor unions. They can be, or re-envisioning what labor is, to office unions and actual, I don't even know how that would look, honestly. Like, are the stockbrokers going to go on strike? I mean, come on, man. We let corporations become powerful against the workers, so everything is right to work. And your healthcare is tied to so the power dynamic is completely out of whack. Yep, power dynamic is completely out of whack. Very much so. Outsourcing offshoring is a side effect of the Reagan era corporate raiders. Yep. Chat is, I love it. I'm even further behind now than I was fucking before, man. God damn it. Let's talk straight whiskey from Texas. We all know it's nothing but steers. And hey, my whiskey only likes whiskey of the opposite sex. Speaking of labels, are there gin labels yet? You know what? Funny you should ask. How's that look for a gin label? Flower Moon Gin, available exclusively in the distillery. So there you go, kids. All right. It's just the tax rate, the racism can stay in the 50s. Chat marker 40 minutes behind at 12:13 is 12:51. I'm now still 40 minutes behind. Do AI 50, blah, blah, blah. All right. I really do need to move faster. I want the gin in Chicago. We have gin, but you're going to have to wait for that in Chicago. We're working on it, though. Am I caught up? Wait, what the fuck? It says 12:51. Did I just like skip through a bunch of chat? What the fuck is going on with chat? What's going on with my screen? Like, it just skipped all the way to the end. There's the gin labels yet. I am going to scroll quickly through this though, because I do need to go home. Do you do the Delphi phase, Pascal? Okay, that's all a bunch of shit about coding. I don't know what that is. I know liberal arts are supposed to teach you. What is that? My Dropbox is full. You didn't hire me. What the hell, Joe? William, you're down in Corpus Christi, right? Is that right? You're down in Corpus? Already useless degree. Monster. Heavy. Yes, it is. Gender studies. There's nothing wrong with gender. I mean, I don't have any problem with blah, blah, blah. So the Democrats haven't lied or shellacked, to use your word. Kamala and Biden did the same with the mainstream media. I don't remember what this is a part of. I'm sorry. I consider myself well versed in being able to follow conversations over the course of 30, 45 minutes and be able to track back to the thread and maintain 3 or 4 threads at the same time. But I don't remember what that is. Shellacked, lied or shellacked, to use your word. But the same with the mainstream media. Are we talking about like when Charlie Kirk got just just totally dog walked with his arguments? Um, I mean, if that's the reference, that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about with that Kirk dude, because they're politicians trying to convince you of their point of view. He's not a politician trying to convince you of his point of view. He's a social activist trying to convince you of his point of view. I mean, 2 pages of the same book. Trump running away from debating her was pretty funny, but also cowardly as hell. Destroy the fascist takeover. Her platform was, "I'm not going to try to destroy America in a fascist takeover." And honestly, that was pretty good enough for me. Yeah, I hope she doesn't run again. I really, really hope she does not run for president again. But we'll see. The best is factual argument and prove true in the first 30 days. Who's saving whom for democracy? Not following. I am very glad that y'all are having a conversation with each other at this point. Kamala and Democrats wanted to save us for democracy, but didn't follow democracy by having a Democratic National Convention and pushing. I am with you. I understand that. I get. Yeah, I'm with you on that too. I'm very disappointed that that one, Biden decided to run again, and two, they didn't decide to have a national an open convention and a floor vote to debate who should be the new the candidate. Um, yeah, I'm very disappointed in how they she might have been the right candidate for the job, but I don't know if anybody was the right candidate for the job at that time. There was nobody who was really stepping up. They cleared the field so that Biden could run. It was a big clusterfuck, and shameful clusterfuck at that. Um, the lack of primary for parties never part of democracy. Dude thinks he won, he lost still, blah, 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 blah. Huge Biden failure. There's a lot of things that Biden did that I consider to be a failure. Primary among them was not prosecuting the people from the previous regime who have come back into a new regime, but also running for a second term, I think was a huge, huge mistake. Talking about blah, blah, blah. Sunflowers. Sunflowers is in chat. Hey, Sunflowers. Welcome to the party, kid. Independents should get a say. Independents do get a say in primaries. They can vote in a primary. At least they can in Texas. So the Clintons did blah, blah, blah. Charlie was a good person. Debates are good. Yeah. Both of those things are true. It's 12:57 in chat. It is 12:57 on my computer. I told you I'd get this done by 1 o'clock. It's time for me to go home. It's like legitimately time for me to go home. I need to go. I have a 10 o'clock meeting. I need to go home. I need to get some sleep. I'm going to have some breakfast in the morning. I'm going to have a drink before I go to bed. And tomorrow night, I think I'm going to, as of right now, I'm planning on doing my happy hour tomorrow night. I have a stack of conversation. Check this out. In my bag, right here, in my hot little hand, in my hot little formerly nicotine-soaked fingers, fucking Zulu, I have a stack of what I like to call conversation cards. So, the Unabomber. What is a fascism? Are we in the whiskey of doom? Will AI kill us all? This is like ideas that I have. I write them down on one of these like little note cards. What are the isms? I don't always remember writing these down, so I'm kind of trying to figure out what they are. What are the isms? Fascism, communism, authoritarianism, and capitalism. AI actually intelligent or nah? AI, good or bad? I had a AI thought party the other day. AI doing science? Question mark. AI doing art? Question mark. AI doing tasks? But I didn't put a question mark on that. Why not politics and religion and sex? Yeah, as a like I was thinking, if I was sitting down at a bar next to a stranger, what kind of topics would I use to start a conversation? As I don't know if the current LLM AI is the day, and no, it's not intelligent. Did you read the sources yet, William? Have you ever heard Charlie speak? Fucking Charlie Kirk's a piece of shit. I'm sorry. Topics to avoid on a first date. Benefits of one night stands. Drawbacks of one night stands. These would be two awesome topics to have with a stranger at a fucking bar. So, time travel? Back to the Future stuff. Part 3 was unnecessary. Baseball is the perfect sport. There you go. So this is the idea. When I have my show on Wednesday night, possibly Tuesday nights now, I may change the idea and do it on Tuesday nights instead of Wednesday nights. But I'm going to have segments. One segment on the show is the whiskeys across America. 50 states of whiskey. We've started with Alabama. My next state is Alaska, but I can't get whiskey out of Alaska. I found a couple of distilleries, but they don't ship out of Alaska. So the next one after Alaska is Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Arizona. Arizona or Arkansas? ARKARI. Arizona will be the next A, because I'm gonna go all 50 states alphabetically. So this next episode, I talked about a distillery. This last episode, I talked about a distillery in Alabama. I ordered a bottle from Alabama. So I'm going to try this whiskey and then move on to the next state and then move on to the next state and eventually work my way through all 50 states. So that's the first thing. The second thing would be one of these topics. And the third thing will be going through chat. Old Humble overnight. So maybe I'll just do it like this on Tuesday night. Maybe I'll come in here and bottle up some whiskey and we'll do some talk. I'll have a topic Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll do it on Tuesday nights instead of on Wednesday nights. I don't know, but I can't do what I like to do on Wednesday night. On Tuesday night, I can't do what I like to do on Wednesday night and have my little chat bubble above, like, going through, unless I have an actual producer producing the show. Uh, hmm. Y'all are still jabbering about stuff. I don't want to cut the show off because y'all are like having a conversation. No, didn't fact check the years. I like talking about books. Books are worthless. Have you seen the train? Have you seen that train wreck of a site? Totally inappropriate for children these days. Like Brian Eno's oblique strategies. What the fuck are you talking about? Let AI write books to you. You let AI read books to you. Yeah, AI read books all the time, and it's ubiquitous right now. There's so many fucking videos on YouTube where it's just an AI voiceover. This person went down a slide and was shocked to find out that it was so fast at the end. Look at how she splashed in the water. Like, no. Fucking AI narration on videos. Stolen videos at that, not even their own videos. Grandma Hazel, disagree. Conservatives suggesting we should focus on logic and reason or emotion is interesting to say at the very least. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. Not telling you how to think, just asking a question. Everything you think for yourself, not talking for yourself, then all good. But yes, okay, ladies and gentlemen, brothers, sisters, children of all ages, this is what I did tonight. I have to go home. It's 1 o'clock, 1:04. But emotion exists. Oh, that's a great. Does emotion exist? Hold on, I got to write that one down. Does emotion exist, or is it a social construct? Ooh, that's a big think piece there. Does emotion exist, or is it a social construct? I like that. Emotion. Social construct? Oh, here's another fun one. Good and evil. Social construct? Or real? That's a fun conversation to have. Lisa is firmly of the opinion that good and evil exist empirically. I am of the opinion that good and evil is a social construct. All right, guys. Can it be both? Can it be both? Can what be both? Does emotion exist? Oh, sympathy. No, sympathy versus sympathy is easy. Are social constructs real? Are social constructs RUCTS real? Are social constructs real? These are all good topics to have all for a happy hour. I like it. I like it. I'll be back tomorrow night, or if not tomorrow night, next Tuesday, and we'll do another. I like to do the happy hour from my pandemic studio. Does true objectivity? Can true objectivity exist? True objectivity exist? See, I like these topics because they're not necessarily debatable topics, but they're discussable topics. There's something that you can talk about, but it's not. You're not trying to change each other's opinion on it. You're just trying to talk about it. It's a true discussion. It's something that we can do a thing that dude always said he was doing, but didn't really do. We can have a discussion about a topic, a free and open discussion about a topic, and share the same reality. I'm not going to talk about the fucking Loch Ness Monster because the Loch Ness Monster doesn't exist. Unless you want to talk about how the Loch Ness Monster doesn't exist and how we know things don't exist. I've done that. How do we know things don't exist? That's, how do you know? Do we know things don't exist? You have that whole notion that you can't prove a negative. Well, you can. You can prove a negative. You can demonstrably prove that there's not a planet between Earth and Mars. You can demonstrably prove it because the things that need to exist in order to demonstrate a thing is there don't exist. So you can absolutely prove a negative by proving that the things that would require the thing to be there that aren't there prove that the thing that isn't there isn't there. You follow what I'm saying? Like, how can you prove that he doesn't have a cat in his house? Well, there's no litter box, there's no cat toys, there's no cat bed, and the house doesn't smell like cat shit and cat piss. So the lack of evidence that the cat exists is evidence that the cat doesn't exist. The lack of evidence isn't of itself evidence. So how do we know things don't exist? How do you prove a negative? Well, the absence of things is the negative proof. That's how you prove it. You prove that the things that are not are in fact not. That's how you prove a negative. That's how you prove that something doesn't exist. Like how do you prove that a conspiracy doesn't exist? Well, first you have to in order to prove this, you have to establish what would be required for the conspiracy to exist and then prove that that doesn't. So you almost have to construct a straw man to support their fallacious construct. And then simply prove that the things that would require that straw man to exist don't exist. That's how you prove it. Like, this is how we know that there are no aliens visiting Earth. Because there are no aliens. How do you prove that there wasn't a civilization 10,000 years ago that got wiped out by an ice age on Earth? Well, you prove that there's no evidence of a civilization from 10,000 years ago. Like, civilizations leave fingerprints. Anyway, we'll talk about all that stuff on the next show. For now, it's after 1 o'clock. It's time to go to bed. We can prove what we know doesn't exist, but we can't prove what we don't know that doesn't exist. We can't what we don't know. We can't know what it is that we don't know. The as Donald Rumsfeld would say, the unknown unknowns. So I can prove that there's no aliens close enough to visit Earth. I can't prove that there's no aliens. The overwhelming evidence suggests that there are, in fact, extraterrestrial life forms in the universe. Math says there has to be. But math also says that there are none close enough to actually visit us. So, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, children of all ages, it is after 1 o'clock. I am going to bed. I am the old humble guy. I have been for at least 15 years now. You're not. Let's keep it that way. See me next time. If not tomorrow night, then it'll be next Tuesday. Be awesome to each other. Cheers and good night.